Laura Brotherson. She's written a groundbreaking book on sex in marriage called And They Were Not Ashamed, and I recommend it to almost every couple that comes into my clinic because it is so helpful. It's respectful of the sexual relationship, and yet it's detailed. And so she will be with us to talk about how we can strengthen our sexual relationship in marriage.
Welcome back to the home team. Now, as you can see, we have kicked Danny out of this segment because we're talking about female desire now. Just the females.
Just the females.
Girl talk now.
We have with us best-selling author and intimacy educator Laura Brotherson, and she has written a groundbreaking book called And They Were Not Ashamed. And like I said before, I recommend it to so many clients that I work with because you have, it's detailed and respectful.
That's what we try to do.
And I love that. It's detailed and respectful, not one or the other, which a lot of other books are.
Yes.
So thank you for being here with us.
It's an honor to be here. I think you guys have a great show and it's very fun.
So one of the big complaints that couples have when they come in my clinic is a difference in sexual desire.
That's probably the most common.
And so we're going to talk about the 8 T's that you have come up with to help improve female sexual desire.
Yeah, so I mean a lot of women really do struggle with this difference. I mean, a lot of people think that men's sexual desire and women's sexual desire just can't come together. But I really am here to tell you that it can. It can be it can really come together. And the 8 T's of the female sexual response that I've kind of developed, I think help women particularly to kind of walk through, okay, what area might I be getting a little bit stuck with? And the first one is thoughts. The most important organ for a woman is her thinking, her brain. And if she can really make sure what's going on in her mind is positive and productive toward a healthy, intimate, passionate sexual relationship, that's key one. So there's thoughts.
So I don't want to interrupt you.
No, please.
But just really quick, before we go into more, is this something that we need to have within ourselves, or is this something that maybe our husbands need to know about us in order to...
Both.
Okay.
Both, absolutely. Women need to understand this, men need to understand this, and then mostly I'm trying to empower women so they don't feel like, you know what, I'm never in the mood and I have no idea what to do about it. I want people to know, women particularly, to know there is something they can do about it, and I want the men listening to know that they can do something about it to help their wives feel more desire to be intimate. So, but like you said, it's got to start with thoughts. What's going on? What are you thinking about sex? What are you thinking about your husband? What are you thinking about the kids? That all has to really kind of be in line, and I help women really work through how to work through that. Secondly is tenderness, and that's like what we've talked about before, the emotional connection. Men and, husband and wife really need to feel that emotional connection because for women, they are stirred by that emotional intimacy. That's kind of where their desire begins. Whereas for men, theirs is a lot more physical. They can physically or just have a thought and they can be in the mood. So we've got to have that tenderness. And I talk a lot about how couples can develop that close relationship. After thoughts and tenderness, teasing. I added in this one because it's so important for couples to have a degree of playfulness. That's one of the great things about watching you and Danny is just that teasing and playfulness. It's great because there needs to be a level of fun and that in that relationship, and that's just got to be there. So teasing.
A lot of times that is absent.
It's absent.
And it's just, we do, you go along, do your thing, take care of the kids.
Go through the emotions. Yeah.
And the playfulness, I think, is really, really important.
And one great way to start that is making sure you're having a date night. I mean, if I could get couples to do that one thing, to have a date night every single week, that would really do so much, not just for the sexual relationship, but for every aspect, every dimension of the marriage.
But it doesn't have to be you go out, you just focus on each other without talking about the kids for 5 minutes?
Sure,
is that a date?
I mean, it could be putting kids to bed early and watching a movie together and just cuddling. Okay. I mean, it can be a lot of different things. So definitely we need the teasing and the playfulness. What's next? Talk. So talk, this is important not just for building the emotional environment, because you've got to be able to communicate, but also for a lot of women, there's a degree of auditory arousal within lovemaking, that if there can be a little bit more of expressing of the pleasure and the feelings that you have, that can be very helpful for women as well.
To hear their husbands express
and for
them to express.
learn to, I mean, because for a lot of women, it's difficult for them to express themselves in the midst of lovemaking a little bit. And that's another really great way for couples to connect. So touch. Now, touch is so important not only for sexual touch, but also for non-sexual touch. A lot of couples are touch deprived, if you believe it. And it's because sometimes we get to where once you're having sex, then we don't do as much affection as we should. And so oftentimes I've given homework to couples where they need to have one night where it's touching, cuddling, holding hands, and no strings attached. It's not going anywhere.
That's an assignment I use a lot too.
Yes,
to
it's
get them
very important.
Connecting and remembering what we used to do when sex wasn't okay.
Yes, exactly.
Now, do you have the men having a harder time with that than the women?
I don't really care. They just need to learn some of these things.
That's awesome.
I mean, if they want what the results are, then I think once they can see that the results are there, they'll work towards it.
They'll do anything.
They'll do anything. No, really. And the other important part of touch that a lot of couples don't understand is that very often women don't get enough of the actual stimulation that they need to experience like an orgasm. And so that's kind of a major educational area that couples need.
So that brings us into technique.
Technique, exactly. So, and that's where a lot of couples, I always laugh at men because they're like, what's there to learn about sex? I mean, like, you've written a big book about it, and they're like, what's there to learn? But what they don't know is that while sex is fairly simple for a man, it's much more complicated for a woman. And so when they can both kind of learn, oh, that's my sexual wiring, okay, I can understand. Then the husband's like, oh, I get it now. You need this, and you need this, and I do have to be nice to you today, you know? Stuff like that is really important.
So really quickly, we have two more. Transcendence.
Transcendence, really quickly. All that means is that a woman not only, it's not just about the mechanics of the sexual relationship, but she must also be able and willing to let herself experience it. It's the ability to relax and let go. And for a lot of women, that's a hard one. And then time. Time is just not only making the sexual relationship a priority, but making sure you're spending enough time. Because, quickies are fine, but they shouldn't be the regular fare, because that's usually not quite enough for a wife.
Yeah. Thank you so much. She's candid and straight to the point. Thank you.
I have to admit, though, I am glad Danny was not in this segment.
Oh, hey, I was hoping he would be.
You said the O word. I was like, oh, Danny would just be dying right now. But we sure appreciate you coming in.
Thank
that
you.
was very informative.
We have another segment, too, with Laura.
Yes.
And
We'll be back.
Great. Yeah, we're going to talk more with
Not
Laura.
my husband, right? All right.
Not your husband.
All right, now, when we come back, we're going to strengthen our marriage with intimacy.